You're with Pastor Troy right here. We're getting excited. We got a special program for you. You're going to be seeing over the next few weeks until we get ready for season 2. You're going to be seeing the best of the On the Dock season 1. These will be coming at you hard and steady. I want you to get them out there. Check them out. Help us get them out to your friends. We want to see you on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes as well. But this is the best of, get this, the best of season 1. Get ready for it. We're going to be coming at you with a super season 2 coming up this August. We'll see you soon. Enjoy this episode of On the Dock season 1, best of. Pastor Troy here, and we are on the dock. We've got an amazing show for you, and we're all about getting you here on the dock here. Beautiful conversations today to propel you. Listen, we want to propel you out of the shallows into the deep. Ruth is around the table. She's new to On the Dock. She's one of our guest hosts this week. And listen, On the Dock, the graphic we got, Ruth, there with the deck there and the dock. There you go. He brought it back up. Thank you. The chairs there. It's all about us getting together in these chairs in the safety of the dock. You're in the dock. You're safe. The waves are out in the sea. But what we want to do is we don't want to stay here. We want to equip people. We want to give people tools, resources. We want to give them systems and understanding. We want to give them nomenclature, help them understand what's going on in the world. And we are sick and tired of Christians trying to live their whole life on the dock. We're not about that. We're about coming in and getting fueled up. And then bring that picture one more time for me. We want you then to get ready to go out through that pass into the deep waters and get into the things God's called you to do. Knowing the lighthouse, Megan put that beautiful lighthouse there. That lighthouse is there to always get you back home. Jesus Christ, God, our Father, will always guide you back home through the storms. But we want it, while you're here, just get a cup of coffee, get a glass of tea, get some water. You're going to need something to drink during this one. You don't need that kind of beverage. But listen, you need to get something to sit down with us because we are into some good, strong stuff right here. So you're at On the Dock, and we're going to get you out of the shallows into the deep. Hopefully you found us or you wouldn't be hearing us. But all of our podcast partners, we got lots of platforms, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Facebook, Roku, Rumble, and SermonNet. And by the way, we have social media as well on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Telegram. When you find those, go find more than one in case we get knocked off the one. You can find us on the other. Please find us on multiple platforms. When you get there, hit subscribe, like, notify, and share, and make comments, and make sure you share it with other people. And listen, hit notify so that when we go live, we tend to put our podcasts out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. New ones every Tuesday and Thursday. You want to get those alerts to know when they're coming out. And you can always become a partner or a friend, a partner or a supporter at Patreon. Look here. I got one of these beautiful coffee mugs On the Dock with Pastor Troy. If you go to Patreon, you become one of our partners and friends, you can become a partner and get one of these. There's a way to do that. Go to Patreon and find On the Dock with Pastor Troy and learn more about being a partner or a sponsor. We'd love to have you there. You can go to Patreon and look up On the Dock with Pastor Troy. You can also go to our incredible website, onthedock.org. It's got an embedded player as well as links to all of our platforms and including links to our Patreon site as well. Check that out. We'd love to have you. If you've got any questions, you go to info@onthedock.org. Send us an email and we'll help get things sorted out for you. So we're so glad to have you here. And we're on the dock here. We've got a great team here. To my right, I got Mother Beth here with me again in studio. Mother Beth, welcome to the studio. Oh, your mic's not on. Come in. We'll try again. That's okay. This is a live thing. There you go. I hear you, sweetie. That's Mother Beth on the platform. We've also, over to our far right, we have Ruth Jane Subakit.
I got it again.
I get it. Ruth is with us. Ruth's hailing out of Harvard College, Boston, Massachusetts. She says she's not a New England Patriots fan, so we let her enter the room.
For that reason only.
Yeah, we're Steelers Nation here. I know we're in Southern Illinois. We don't have a football team anymore, so we go. I've been Steelers lifelong. Go Steelers. And we all know the New England Patriots are the New England Cheetahs. That's their new mascot, the cheetahs. And so we're glad to have you, Ruth, in studio with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're in this incredible series. You're going to love it, called the Mosaic Initiative series. We're in part 2 of that. Go back and listen to part 1. Part 1's supposed to be an introductory series for us, and we just got knocked down, drag out into it, not against each other, but against an incredible foe out there, and that's this whole concept of human trafficking, and more distinctly, we're dealing in this series with sex trafficking, and it's a big subject. I know what you're thinking. Oh, that doesn't happen around here. Guess what? This program's all about the local face of it. You're going to find out it is so close. It is just all over us here in Williamson County, Southern Illinois, the United States. It is just happening. It is a part of our reality here. And we as Christians need to be aware and understand, and we need to do our very best to make sure that nobody is being exploited. People need to know they're children of God. They're loved dearly and deeply, and we need to be reaching out to people. And there's no way to do that if they're caught in any kind of exploitation of such. So we want to be against that. So we're here at On the Dock to get you information. And we've got across on the table somebody that sometimes will be a co-host. She's certainly the creative arts person for Community of Faith and for On the Dock, but today she comes in as our guest because she has a ministry called the Mosaic Initiative. It's Haley Ottolini. Ottolini in Heron, Illinois, Ottolini everywhere else. Haley is here for phase 2. She didn't run off and leave us after one. We got done with part 1 and she tore out of here. I thought she said, I'm out of here.
I had a significant, copious amounts of coffee.
Well, and on the dock, we drink
right
these beautiful coffee cups. It goes right there.
My second and a half cup sitting at this table, and I had a cup before I came, so...
Well, I told her, Ruth is from Harvard. She's studying this whole subject of sex trafficking. You know, Harvard's big, very good school. I mean, it's a really good school. And I told Haley beforehand. I told her beforehand that she's going to be tearing her up. She's an expert, and I thought when she ran out of here, she'd had enough. But no, she came back. So praise God, Haley, welcome back on this. Just do me a favor, okay? Tell me again, just briefly about your family. You got a beautiful picture of your kids up here.
Yeah.
Tell us about your family. Tell us about yourself real quick again.
So there's my beautiful husband as well. It's Ben. Our last name is a point of contention in our household. Even we both pronounce it differently.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. If you're inherent,
I pronounce it the correct way.
Yeah.
The Italian way, Ottolini, and he pronounces it Ottolini, but I really do it for spelling.
But all the Italians here produce it Ottolini.
Yeah, it's more for spelling, for the sake of
But we have Southern Illinois Italians. We're all a little Southern in our language.
Well, and they changed it just so that people wouldn't know that they were Italian. Just drop
you say
the
tomato,
we say
tomato.
Like yeah. So there's my beautiful husband of almost 7 years. We got married really young, 19 and 20. And then we had our beautiful 2 surprises. I have a relationship with your husband. I consider us we're like brothers deep. We're knitted deeply to one another. He helped design the studio. He's one of our co-hosts. Yeah,
he is my worship pastor here at Community Faith. He is honestly, I've had good worship pastors. I'm not knocking anybody that's ever served me. I've been blessed, but Ben is absolutely the most gifted worship pastor I've ever had.
He really is.
It's not that I've had better singers, maybe I've had better musicians. I don't know. I wouldn't believe
anointed.
But I've had nobody that can open the heavens and worship to God and just lets us jump in with him. He loves the Lord, and as he worships, you can feel that presence. And it's just like he invites us to come along for the ride. And it doesn't matter if look, through COVID, we had nobody in the sanctuary. It changed nothing about the way he worships. He just worships the Lord, and we go along. So you got a beautiful family. Yeah. Just amazing family.
I'm a pretty big fan of him. He's actually out in Reading this weekend. He's going to be playing guitar for a church out there, and he's thrilled because he gets to be with his friends.
Well, fortunately, we get Isaiah here, and Isaiah's, I won't say an upgrade, but it's equal to. They're like brothers in the Lord together.
Be careful with that.
Yeah. But I got a man crush on Isaiah too. So
that's how I met Ben. Yeah, is through Isaiah.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Well, hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I just, the Bible talks about guys being knitted in battle, and I've been to battle with Ben. I love these guys. These guys got a great heart for God. Haley, just give us an overview. I'll throw up your mission statement here. Just help us understand the basics again of the Mosaic Initiative, their mission and basic passion and what you're working on.
Yeah, so it can all be boiled down to this very broad statement of that we combat sex trafficking and exploitation. I say locally and globally to specify, but yes, globally.
For those out there, if you're local, you're global. You're on the planet.
It's both. Okay, yeah, it's both and. Yeah,
I know. I do that with one of our mission statements for Anza Hope. We say locally and globally, regionally, globally.
Our goal is to be about 50-50, like domestic and international. Although we started off more international than locally, but that's changed over.
Well, because as you look up, you find out the subject's not just overseas; it's so up on us.
Well, and I think I'm newer to Southern Illinois, and maybe had some assumptions that there were more resources here in the area. But I think that so as of recently, there's a new shelter coming in specifically for trafficking victims over in Harrisburg, I believe. But that will be the first one in all of Southern Illinois that I know of that's specific
amazing.
to that. The only other shelters I know of in Illinois are all based in Chicago, and there's only a few. So, I mean, yeah.
Hey, define, I'm going to bring this up again. We also, in the first episode one, go watch it. It's so good. What is sex trafficking? You say it's a form on your website, a form of human trafficking. Go ahead and elaborate. You can share on this if you want.
Polaris Project went and identified different forms of human trafficking. It was like maybe 18 different forms. So there are terms that are used pretty interchangeably. And you're not necessarily wrong, but it's kind of like, a square and a rectangle situation. Human trafficking is just a broader term. It involves any type of exploitation and trafficking of persons, whether that's forced labor. You mentioned harvesting organs,
oh my gosh,
slavery.
That's the hottest thing. The
slavery,
Uyghurs right now in China, that's happening there. I hope that isn't happening in Southern Illinois. I mean, I know it's happening overseas readily right now. Readily. I would like to hope and pray. We got enough bad things going on in Southern Illinois. We don't need that either.
My experience is not at all in the organ harvesting.
I certainly wouldn't want one from anybody that would try to do it in Southern Illinois. That's for darn sure. I mean, they can't hardly cut anything, let alone.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh, it'd be terrible. I know, that's terrible. So
to focus back.
Yeah, get us back on track.
It's bad when I'm the one focusing us back.
I know. You got to have some levity on this. This is a tough subject, guys.
Yeah. So sex trafficking is more specific to exploitation for the purposes of sexual nature and exploitation. And so that is, we focus specifically on that form of human trafficking. Sex trafficking is a form of human trafficking, and so that's why they're probably interchangeable to some degree. But human trafficking actually does encompass a lot more than just trafficking for sexual services. But I will mention that when you look at even labor trafficking, they often coexist. Like it's not just one or the other. Sometimes you have really complex situations where there's multiple forms of trafficking happening. Right. But it's helpful for trying to get people the right services and things like that to kind of differentiate to some degree, because there's different services and things that are necessary.
So we talked about episode 1. We talked about,
which Ruth could probably elaborate more on that.
We talked about drugs and trafficking tend to run parallel sometimes. There are yokes between them. Are there other things that you find, Ruth, Haley, that are yoked in that world?
Bonded labor and servitude, like you'll see, if forms like slavery, if you have a woman working in the home, like that's being, forced labor and not making fair wages and things like that. Sometimes you'll often see like sexual abuse happening like alongside of that too. Right. But Ruth, you probably, you've worked more for like with the forced labor aspect.
Yeah. I think I can't necessarily speak to what the factors would be in the U.S., but I know that in the Thai context and in like the Southeast Asian context, that a lot of times there are just like certain populations, whether that be like certain indigenous tribes, certain ethnic groups that are more vulnerable to that. Poverty is obviously a huge factor, like the number one driving factor
for both issues, forced labor,
absolutely.
sex trafficking.
Social, like socioeconomic, like classes, like. Yeah, I think poverty is, I once made like I love mind maps. I even, sometimes do it in the shower with expos and stuff. But I made a mind map of like all the different like root causes of like trafficking. And it all comes down to like brokenness and that like happen, with the fall and et cetera. But I'd say the number one is poverty. Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Or looking for that.
Especially when you're looking into like commercial, like so sex trafficking as far as like with a commercial component is for sure like you're gonna see poverty, but also like you said, there are vulnerabilities of like if you look at what makes certain populations more at risk for these types of exploitation, a lot of times you're going to see that happening, because anytime that you're desperate for something or you're needing to provide something for your family, you know, your basic needs, I mean, it's the hierarchy of needs, you know, your basic needs
the
have
economic
to be covered.
social status is going to really play into
like,
heavily as a whole people or a
and
nation.
I'd say especially internationally from what I've seen, because there's also like difference in culture of like what is expected of it, like how much responsibility of like the financial like of providing for your family, it can change like based on like culture of like what you would expect a child to help provide for their family.
Right. Example, you know, we're very involved community faith church in Thailand. So we have our own churches in Thailand. We do a lot of work in Thailand. In America, the immigrant workforce is largely Hispanic, Latin American. They're brought across. They come across to try to find freedom. Sometimes they're brought across, they're trafficked across, and then they're exploited. So for our country, a lot of the labor that's abused and hidden off the record and then exploited out of fear is Hispanic based labor, Mexican based labor. For Thailand, it's Cambodian. Almost to me, so many Cambodian workers are used in such a brutal way. Burmese have no value in Thailand. The Thai people don't even see them, but they're all being abused. And they'll pay them a little bit, keep them there. And as soon as they get down to the last check, finish a project, they'll call and just say, hey, they're illegal here. And then the guy doing the work can get out of having to pay them. And they're just abused. And their work we go there a lot. So we see Cambodians start laying bricks or working on a roof. And we're talking about Thai heat, 100-degree Thai heat. We're talking about 6 a.m. to dark, 6 to 6. Yeah.
You see that with any marginalized group, like increases your risk hugely. One, because of just like the logistics of being in a completely different place than like where you're born and used to being in if you're displaced. But also, you know, there's complexity with it, but language barrier or cultural barriers.
Well, the Cambodians certainly speak differently like that.
Other population looks at you and like where your social class, like, you know, in India, which if you're not aware, I'm very in love with India. But you know, the caste system and even like colonialism, all of those things have come into huge play.
Absolutely. Even
now, like as it's supposedly illegal and not there anymore, you still see the systemic repercussions of those things, and I think it's definitely like the way that people are looked at too, even but like even here, like it's a homeless, like displaced youth, like homeless youth, super high at risk, things like that.
Let's dig into the local part. So this show is on the local face of the work of the Mosaic initiative. And on your website, you say on a local level, we're focused on facilitating training and education for our community. I really appreciate that. We need that in our community. Yeah. Haley, you're going to bring something very valuable in the prevention and detection of sex trafficking and sexual abuse. I'm assuming you're going to be equipping pastors and churches, but also law enforcement, legal authority. It says within the 2021-22 year, you're planning on facilitating some local trainings, culture of care, law enforcement training, foster healing. We're going to get deeper into each one of these, but just give me an overview of why you've picked these things.
So one thing I would say is like the way I wanted to create this organization was of like an abundant mindset. So I've seen a lot of like you wouldn't necessarily think it, but especially in like nonprofit world, when you're trying to get like donors and funds and stuff, it can get kind of weirdly competitive. And that was like, I wanted to structure our organization so that any win for our field was a win for us. Right. I wanted to structure our organization so that any so that the important things were important, you know, like any victory that we have towards improving the life, healing, hope, for restoring dignity for another individual was a win for us. And I wanted to create a culture of that. And so I think one of the main ways I wanted to do that was like also recognizing our limits and our capacities. So I really wanted to focus on bringing experts in their specific, like in specified areas, to come and train in those specified areas rather than trying to do it ourselves. Because I've seen that happen a lot. And I think that's where we see like the lack of excellency in our field is when we, you know, and it's never like ill-intended, but I think there's just so much more that can happen together. And I've made a lot of effort to like recognize my limits and bring in like, knowledge that I don't have. Like I might know a decent amount about it, but if I know that there's someone that knows even more than me, I want to learn, I want to bring them in. Right. And maybe next time we'll do the training or 3 times from now, but I want to learn as much as I can. I also want, for our area specifically, I think one of the best things that I can do is connect them to expert resources. Because a lot of times it's just like a matter of like having the time to do it and having like that being our focus. So I think we really focus on like trying to bring in expertise to our area because there's just like a lack of that happening.
And that's specifically, we're based, for those of you who don't know, On the Dock's based out of Marion, Illinois. We're housing, Southern Illinois. So the Southern Illinois community, we can get broader into Illinois, but you tell somebody you're from Illinois, they go Chicago, and we're 6 hours from there. We're closer to Memphis and Nashville. Yeah. So we're really Southern people, but in our area, we're closer to Missouri. Missouri's very close, and there's all kinds of exploitation taking place down here around 57 and 55 and the interstate in our communities. So we're talking about really right here, Williamson County. We're right up against Jackson County and Perry County as well. So there's a huge area here. Let me ask you. I want you to dig deeper into these. You mentioned 3 areas. Tell me first of all about this concept of this. I'll bring up the graphic here about this this culture of care. I know you've had this going. I know you've done this event, and you're going to be maybe doing more with this. Tell us about what this organization does, your partnership with them, what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. So actually, a recent development is you'll see Robin Blair as the director. That has changed.
Oh man.
But I actually started a relationship with this organization many years ago. It was my dream organization to work with. I've like been in love with them since, probably for the last 12 years. Stephanie Freed was the founder of the organization. And one time she knew who I was when I talked to her, like the second time. And I called Ben and was like, listen, if Jeremy Riddle, who's like a really famous worship leader, if you're not aware, my husband's like obsessed with him. If he were to know who you were, this is the level of excited that I am. And I was just like geeking out. So I'm really excited to work with this organization because I do think that they're really setting a standard of excellence. And they're a pioneer organization. They've been around for a long time. They've learned a lot of experience. And they really employ like people who like they're really trying to empower those in their community. And it's really cool to watch. This organization is called Rafa International. And they actually started creating this idea of culture of care, and we've been talking about it for like 3 years. And then COVID hit. So like this is an ongoing partnership that we've been like wanting to build, and like through some really very God ordained moments, I was able to connect with them. We knew some like random mutual friend who lives in Malawi, one of those crazy events. And so it's just really cool. I actually found a notebook of mine from like 10 years ago where I took notes on one of their lectures. So this particular thing I'm really excited about because what it is, it's all about empowering church communities to create safe spaces. Because oftentimes, and as much as we don't want to admit it, the church is like an easy ground with the amount of grace that we give and this like almost like feeling of protection within the church and the bubble of it. You see sexual abuse within the church a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. You see the Boy Scouts just paid almost $1 billion in damages to destroy the organization. Most Scout units started out in churches, starting with trusted people. You'd think you see massive suits in the Roman Catholic Church. You see it in secular churches. Beth and I were planning churches 30 years ago, and we were getting ready to plant our first church at Highland Hope. And right in the week that we're launching everything, we're putting all this marketing out about it. Come join our first service. There's a United Methodist pastor 20 minutes away in Nashville being arraigned and arrested for multiple cases of sexual abuse of minors. Great. Come to our new Methodist church over here. At the same time, I paid for all this advertising, and the front line is this guy getting arrested. We found out he'd been in 3 other churches. People kind of knew what was happening. They just kept turfing him around, Right. And this is not a Roman Catholic. This was a Methodist preacher. And the system kind of knew he had a problem, but rather than just nip it and take him out.
That happens a lot,
I know. They just think like, well, let's move him over here, and all of a sudden he'll be normal.
What we see a lot is they'll move them internationally.
And don't tell anybody. And don't tell anybody.
Outrageous. Well, that's like, and not to get overly controversial, but back like a year or two ago with the John MacArthur thing, making fun of Beth Moore and things, it was particularly upsetting because like the air that the whole like convention had like as men about women,
right?
You're like, can you not like whether you interpret the scriptures that way or not, it doesn't matter. It's the way that they were talking about it.
Yes.
Was like, do you not see that this is probably one of the reasons you have over 700 allegations of sexual abuse within your convention?
Just your attitude and your
it's
behavior.
the attitude that like hierarchical, like the abuse of power, like whether it was against just women or children, boys, etc. But it's like if you create that kind of like attitude, I think it's like a
I think
toxic culture.
hierarchical leadership is different than spiritual leadership. You can be a spiritual leader and have a right ethos and a right spirit, and you can lead from the front in a proper way, and you lead from the front by demonstrating yourself, and then you can be a hierarchical leader. Listen to me, I'm the leader, follow me. That never works out well, does it?
And I think it's really important to have like equipped congregations as well as leadership. Because like you look at Ravi Zacharias and stuff, he had all these like accountability things set up, but they weren't really, you can always give that illusion of that, but it takes people who are trauma informed to be able to actually see these things and be able to like feel empowered to step out. And so that's really what this
there's tremendous violation inside the walls of the church on this.
It really is. And it's not just inside. I mean, this training really is created to help in two parts. One, obviously to prevent sexual abuse within the church, which is so important. And I think that it makes people uncomfortable, so they don't want to do it.
Right.
Like they don't know how to do it. It's people that they know, especially like, yes, in big churches, because it's harder to like see everything, you got these massive churches, but small churches, it's people that you know. And it's really hard for us to like think, oh, this person that I know. And so like, I mean, it's gotten easier.
It's hard. Let me bring it to reality. I'm not going to name location and stuff just because I just don't want to do that right now. But I pastored a church early in my career, and when we left, long gone.
Yeah.
No leadership well. It came out that the worship leader had been abusing kids in the church for a while.
Yeah.
And I had stood next to this person while they led worship as a young pastor.
It's really hard.
No idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
Because nobody was speaking. Nobody was the issue of shame. The kids weren't talking about it. They felt a little bit threatened on it. Not a threatening, imposing person, but
leadership tends
to
like
who
try
the person
to protect,
was.
the wrong people.
The person was a kind of like almost an untouchable in our community. And so nobody wanted to say anything. And when I found out who it was, I mean, Beth and I like, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
I could see it. I never saw it, or I would have clipped it, I promise you. But at the same time, it's a lot closer than we all think.
Oh, absolutely.
So procedures, when you talk about the culture of care, I read in their notes about what they do. They do trauma-informed church work where they provide safety and support to survivors. So they help unwind things that have happened. But bigger than that, I see where they work to recognize and respond to where it's happening.
Responding,
active.
Correctly responding is a big part of it.
So there's post-care, there's active care, and then they do consultation and policy review so that pastors like myself or ministry organizations can also have good procedure in front to make sure things aren't able to happen. So they're doing preventative, they're doing middle of the prevent and post.
It works in like a 3-part series. It's
background,
it's really helpful.
even advanced stuff like background training.
Yeah. So this it's actually it's a 1-day training that we had, and it was set up in 3 parts. And the first part's kind of open to the general public and the congregation, which is really important to have like a trauma informed, because one, it's like you're not just trying to protect against abuse within the church, but you're also like, one, if you're in ministry, I can guarantee you 100% that you are doing ministry with a survivor.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And whether it's a survivor of sexual trauma or other forms of trauma, it's very important as ministry workers to be trauma informed. Mm-hmm. And even if you've experienced trauma yourself, like some of going through the healing process is understanding like the effects of trauma on the brain, the effects of on behavior. And especially like when working with children and stuff, there are specific signs that you can see for complex sexual like behaviors, like sexual abuse behaviors. And so ministry workers are at a really unique position to be able to recognize some of those things.
Right.
And we always say like detection is prevention. So if you start noticing, a kid, for example, suddenly mom has a new boyfriend, kid starts like above the age wasn't normal. Maybe they're starting to have accidents at church suddenly, or
distant,
like they're
quiet,
acting out.
yeah.
Teenagers, there's a long list. Sometimes it's hard to differentiate, between the regular, just like teenage angst and
Right.
PTSD, but it's just important to understand how to respond to people, because it's really easy to see some of these behaviors and be like, why are you doing this? But like,
Yes.
and it's not like freely, like, I guess I've learned over time that not everyone totally knows how to respond in situations like that. But I think it's really important for ministry workers to know.
Well, look, here-
I think
go
one of the struggles with ministry people, or with Christians too, is that we don't want to come off judgmental. I
Right.
know that we had that happen.
Or we,
Yeah.
or
I
we
know where
do
you're, I
way
know
too
where you're
much.
going. I know where you're
A
going
staff
already.
person that we
Oh Lord,
had
vetted
some
well.
reservations about, but we decided we were just being judgmental, and we were
They were of a
judging
lower
by
social economic
appearances.
status, came from
Right.
the other side of a town.
So we kind of pushed aside our reservations.
I don't wanna look down at this person.
Later, we found out things that we regretted.
I should have trusted my gut.
But I think Christians try to be.
They were sexually abusing one of their own children. They were
Yeah.
accused of other people. They were involved with scouting, and
And that's why it's important to have like the whole congregation and leadership
Right.
somewhat trauma informed, because so
And hey, I background searched them. I called previous
yeah.
pastors,
Well-
and they told me what they knew about the family. But they did, when I called them back and said, "Why didn't you give me this information?" They said, "Well, I just really knew the mom. Mom's a good person." I said, "The mom being a good person is not a recommendation to me.
No.
You told me you vouched for them."
well, and there's to some degree, like when something's like covered up, there we can teach you all the signs, we can teach you all the red flags, but there's times where your spouses don't even know about their
well, of
Right.
spouse
course.
abuse,
Agreed.
Right,
things like
right.
that. So it's not to say that like even to the trained eye, sometimes it's hard to like spot.
I'm trained in
course.
sociology. I have 30 hours of sociology and
Yeah.
psychology training,
So-
and I was totally fooled.
Yeah.
But because I listened to people that I thought gave good counsel, but I also tried to check off my
Right.
things that say, well, he's not from, maybe he dresses a little cheaper than I do or whatever. So I don't want to be judgmental. So let's give this a shot. Nothing
Yeah.
happened on our watch,
No.
but
Right. Which is probably because of policies and procedures that you had in
Yes.
place,
Absolutely.
right? So, and I think that's a large part of it. So I share this a lot more than I used to, and it's getting easier each time. But it's also like, I'm reluctant to share too much on it because it isn't entirely my own story, but parts of it are. Growing up in the church, at one point, the man that I considered the most I named him as the most influential person in my life. Right before I got married, he was arrested and went to prison for sexually abusing one of my peers, and it was actually one of my friends, family members, and I was actually really close to both their family and to my youth pastor's family, and I did have some reservations about him. I remember looking at him at one point and saying, "You're very calculated. You're pretty manipulative. I hope you use that for like the right things." And
Right.
and I at least could recognize that, but hindsight's 20/20, and
Right.
as a teenager, there's a lot of things you brush off as like, oh, he's just like trying to be cool with
or
the
he's
kids or whatever.
charismatic or,
Yeah, it's a lot. A lot of times it is.
Which can be a gifted trait.
He had a really charismatic personality. He,
Connects with people
weirdly
well.
was a good teacher, like things like that. But I saw a gross negligence of leadership in that church. It wasn't just him, but it was the leadership. Like the policies and procedures weren't in place. There was a lot of sweeping under the rug. And that's why, like, to me, this is like such a personal project. Is like, if I can prevent, I saw my entire community just like absolutely just torn to shreds.
It
I've
just
seen people
destroys
walk
it,
away
yeah.
from the Lord for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. So let me just summarize here, and we'll move to the next one. But Culture Care basically is coming in, and if you want to go check out Culture Care,
Yeah.
I looked at their website, Culture Care. It's Rafa,
Rafa.org.
Rafa.org. Yeah, I got it up there.
They
Rafa.org.
also have a policies and procedures example that they'll give you on their resource page.
Right.
So even if you can't somehow like come to one of the trainings,
Get on there and learn from
get
their
on there
site.
and learn. Yeah, they have like really good example policies and procedures, like
And they got
windows
a
in the doors,
lot.
no internal investigation, things like that, that are
Right.
just really good policies to have in place, because when it does get messy, and I promise you it absolutely will, like it's not an if you get allegations, it's a win.
Right.
And when it gets really messy, and it's always messier than you think it is, and it's always harder
always.
it's always muddied, it's always hard to
Yeah.
figure out. having these policies and procedures in place will really help you best protect the people that need protecting. Because I think oftentimes when we're trying to figure it out, a lot of times churches will try to protect people and they try to protect the wrong people.
Yeah. The back, so they're going to help with backgrounds. They're going to help you understand how to do background checks, how to do safety procedures and good
mandated
stuff.
Reporting, all that.
Mandated reporting, which is huge. You know, as clergy, teachers, medical people, police officers, there's mandated reporters, and you have to make those calls. I have made those calls before, and it's a tough thing to do, but you just got to do it.
Really hard,
You got to do it. And then they're going to help people that are recognizing the symptoms that are in it, and then help people with training after. Get on their website. Go to rafa.org, check out their whole culture care program. They're great stuff. Now, hey, let me jump to the second piece you talk about in this. You also talk about doing work with law enforcement. You talk about
that's a goal.
Part 2 was law enforcement and training, and you call this program. Tell me about that. What your idea there is.
Yeah, so this is not like entirely set in stone at the moment, but we are in current conversations with local law enforcement to bring in a detective out of Texas who specializes in data-driven investigations. So he's, again, it's one of those people that I look up to a lot. Yeah. Super fun guy. Most interesting phone conversations I've had. The most cursing on a professional call. I love it. He's definitely like a cowboy hat wearing Texan. Yeah. And I think is going to so it's really hard in our field to find people that can translate well from, like, there kind of seems to be a divide, and maybe this is just from my experience, I don't mean to apply this to everywhere, but between law enforcement and the therapy world. So there's like, especially in the Midwest, I think, like there's definitely kind of this like unspoken.
How to better train the local law enforcement to identify what's going on. So,
well, because they see a lot, and I think that we have so much, like both groups have so much to learn from each other, and I feel kind of somewhere in the middle of like experiences and
I feel like a lot's seen here locally, but it's invisible because the eye's not been trained.
Yeah, exactly. I think they see it a lot and they just don't even know, and maybe don't have like know what. Yeah. So he's really good at being able to like almost translate, if that makes sense, like from, and I like him a lot because he's not just like, and this is this is not to be offensive towards FBI or anything, but he's been like a street cop. Like he's seen it. He's been on the street. He's not like,
he knows what the face of it looks like.
Yeah. Like he knows what the average police officer goes through each day. And he's able to take like trauma informed training and like working with survivors and working with NGOs and translating that in a way that's going to be received, which is really important because you want whatever training is being done to be received and like applied. Because it's really useless if it's not applied, right? Of course. So he's really cool. He's worked with like, I mean, his background's extensive. He's consulted for multiple like federal agency, like multiple government agencies. He's consulted for Polaris Project. I think, they've helped recover over 2,000 survivors or something like that. I mean, you'll have to look at his page. It's cool. Detective Joseph Scaramucci, but
so once again, you're just trying to help equip and
yeah, there's just like a lot of room. Like I love our local law enforcement. I have a good relationship with them. But there's like always room for improvement in any field, and I think right now they're really overworked in specific areas, but there's a lot that we can do as a community. And I've had a lot of support from the mayor and can only say high praises of both our chief and our mayor. I have
a very good relationship with Mayor Absher and also Mayor Fertini and Heron.
I really like our chief of police.
And when we get into the round table, I'm going to make an offer to you on something on this that I think you're going to like. But I think this is the right way. Tell us a little bit real quick. We're running low on time here in the local segment, but tell us about this idea of fostering healing. That's a little different. That's a little off the track. It's a little tangential, but I know, like, this church has a special relationship with foster parents and the networking, the Restore Network and stuff. Tell me how that got into your bailiwick and what is that all about in the local context? Yeah.
So we're still like, again, a lot of these things are goals and like things that we're working towards. We actually just got our 501c3 this last September. So, and I'm primarily the main person on the team right now. We have a board and things like that, and we're growing our team steadily. But it takes a minute.
It does. It takes time.
Yeah. So this is like our goal is to start kind of doing this in the spring. We might be partnering with Centerstone It's a local
Very cool.
group. But
Counseling-
it's like the
counseling group.
number. Yeah. So it's the number one request I get is foster families asking, okay, so we know what complex sexual trauma
The
behaviors
kids that
are
are coming into the foster parents are extremely, they've either visually seen, been around incredible trauma of all kinds.
A lot of
victims
times,
of.
yeah.
Victims of, seen,
Survivors,
watched.
yeah.
They've watched abuse. They've been abused.
Yeah.
They're coming. They're just in difficult situations.
And the really good foster families, the ones that are actually there for the right reasons and like willing to step up and try to like rewire these trauma pathways in the brain and things. And
Which is very difficult in somebody that's before they're 8 years. By the time you're 8 years old, a young girl is well identified, and boys are a little slower. Girls, you guys figure yourself out faster than we do.
brain development is like 5 years faster or something.
Yeah.
for
It's
women.
like
I
boys
remind
are
my
like
husband of
10.
that a lot.
Yeah, we got a little time. Guys were a little slower, so about 10. But girls by 5, 6, 7, 8 are wired. And then guys are like 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
wired.
I think they say it takes like the same amount of time, like to rewire, like whatever trauma. I mean, obviously it depends, but like with trauma, if someone was in a traumatic household, like
to unpack that.
to unpack that for 2 years, it's going to take at least 2 years.
I
for,
agree.
like,
I agree.
Constant
To rebuild paths and to reset things.
Yeah.
So basically, your foster program is going to begin to identify and kind of work along some of those.
So I think like the thing is for them is it's not what are these behaviors, which is, a whole training in itself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them know these are complex like behaviors coming out, but they have no idea how to address them in their house.
Right.
So like, for example, and this is kind of, I am sure is hard to talk about, and I don't ever mean to come across as callous. It's just part of my job. So I'm pretty like compartmentalized when it comes to being able to talk about it. But I promise you there are times where I like sit in my house and I cry or I vomit. I have it like once every like 6 months or something. I just let myself bleh it all.
Yeah.
But so like sexual aggression amongst kids. So that's like a very common one that we see, but it's like how do you like address like one of your foster children or your other child who's experienced trauma,
Right.
being sexually aggressive to one of your other children or at church.
And where did that come from?
Yeah,
and where did that develop
and
from?
how do we address this? Or even like,
What's that rooted in?
sexual, like, so there's like a sexual awakening too, more in like, so like hypersexuality in younger kids. And we don't ever want to talk about that, but like, so like what would be normal for a toddler that's like more in the exploratory like phase, like for my kids, like, it's like we're learning about our bodies right now. And
Right.
that's like all the rage is asking people what body parts they have.
Well, but that's been
that's
happening.
normal, and that's very normal. But
Yeah.
then when you have a survivor of sexual trauma, it's more sexually driven, and so it's like the way that you would like be like, okay, maybe not here, but like if you're gonna figure it out like somewhere else, like not in front of people. It's different, and it's like parents don't have the adequate tools of knowing how. And I don't know if anyone completely does, but like how do we best equip these families to, because they're in, I think, one of the
They're at risk. They're the
greatest-
highest at risk group that you can get
Yes,
probably, in our region.
But even so, it's like these kids who've experienced this level of trauma, like because sexual aggression is in itself a symptom of what happened to them. It's like you don't want these kids to cross over into perpetrators at some point.
It also becomes a language they learn and become familiar
and
with.
child abuse is one of the largest things that we see, and so
Right.
it's how do we best protect these kids from crossing that
and
line themselves, and also like how do we help these parents navigate those situations, because they're like that's like for a normal functioning family that hasn't had trauma. I don't want to say normal, but like for a family
Right.
that's not experienced these things, it doesn't just like come naturally. I don't think there's no like guidebook on how to do that. That's like not a normal, like this is something that really should have never had to have happened.
Right.
So and I can only understand from the the standpoint of where we're at, like it's challenging to be a parent regardless. So we just want to help kind of equip foster families, even with the building blocks. Like a lot of these things take ongoing like family counseling. But how do we give them the building blocks of like, generally speaking, here's some ways to help you address these things, and like without shaming children, but also like empowering them, but also teaching them what it like, if those boundaries have been crossed and they've been taught those as normal, like how do we teach what is actually like a healthy boundary between
Right.
others. Like we have a lot of talk in our house about consent at like 3 years old. My daughter knows, like.
Well, what's interesting, the whole heart of what you're doing in the Mosaic Initiative is really helping empower people, giving people tools to work through it. And even the foster thing is out of that same passion of giving people family that are trying to help and do the right thing, keeping them in the game, giving them tools to kind of continue to make victors instead of victims. We need to, in Christ, we're trying to help people overcome and become victors, not victims. And we don't want to be victims ourselves. We're trying to do good work. You get burned out.
Thriving survivors.
Well, I mean, when you're fighting sex trafficking, if you're doing an organization, you can burn out easily. The foster parents, if they burn out, we're not better off. So we need to equip them and help them and work with them too. You're doing a great job with that. Let me ask you one last question. We got to get out of this episode. We're getting long in it. You've got this. I didn't address it in the last one. You've got this on your website, Join the Movement. I'm going to talk about it more in the next couple, but I wanted to say you've listed these things, learn the facts and the red flags. I'm thinking that's towards sex trafficking, correct?
Yeah, that's like probably the best entry. Like, I mean, that's like the typical entry into sex trafficking 101, like learn what it is, learn how to notice it.
And we've talked about that in this episode. We want you, if you're seeing human trafficking, there's a hotline there, 888-373-7888. We want to encourage you to do that. If you know it's happening, please call. We want you to support ministries on the front line. The Mosaic Initiative is one of those ministries that's on the front line by donating. We'll tell you how to do that in a minute. Praying for them, encouraging and volunteering. We're going to be talking to more of those, like Tamar Center over in Thailand. We'll be talking to them and other organizations like that in the future on the dock. So we want you to get out there. Don't just listen to us. Get in there and be an active supporter. You yourself, stop watching pornography and fueling the demand. Stop watching it. Stop watching it. Quit fueling the demand for trafficking. Buy ethically sourced goods. If you'll buy the right kind of things, it won't exploit other people.
Anytime you're creating like ethical jobs with fair wages.
It's hard always to know, but do
person
the
a way out
best you can. Right. Do a little homework. Invest in youth. Be an advocate and spread awareness. Ask how you can use your skills, giftings, and occupations to serve. Get involved in your community in serving. Monitor your children's and your teenagers, please, online presence. Know where your parents are. We don't let our kids go stay at people's houses. Never did. And until we know the parents and know the household. We did. Well, they're old now.
We didn't when they were kids.
We did not until we knew those parents and knew what they were about. There was none unless I'm going somewhere. I need to know your parent and what they're about. Make sure you know what your children are doing. They're online, where they're going, what they're doing. And finally, join petitions and press for better legislation. We need to bite into this. And we're going to talk much deeper about this in the roundtable, but we're going to come back. Haley, you are opening our eyes to the stuff around us. There's a lot going on. We're going to get much deeper as we move forward this. You can support the Mosaic Initiative. Haley Ottolini locally, executive director, the founder of the Mosaic Initiative. You can email her at connect@themosaicinitiative.org. Her website's themosaicinitiative.org, and you can go there and click on the donate link to donate to her organization. That's one of the ways you can join the movement, and you can check out also their Facebook page at the Mosaic Initiative. We'll be back in part 3, and we're going to take a look at the work Mosaic is doing internationally in the international network that they have. It's incredible. And so, ladies, good stuff, good work. It's not as deep as the first one. We got a little bit of a breather here with you working on some prevention and helping us not get into trouble. But I got a feeling we're going overseas. It could get rough in the next episode. You don't want to miss it. We'll be back on part 3 to dig into that. You can always find out more about us at onthedoc.org. Check us out. All our viewers, all our links to our platforms are there, as well as all of our partnerships as well. And you can email us anytime at info@onthedoc.org. And we would love to have you find those platforms of ours: YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Roku, Rumble, and Sermonette. We'd love to hear your comments on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Telegram. Remember, keep them nice and friendly. You can be serious, but we don't want anything ugly. We don't do that business on the dock. We're about building the kingdom of God and encouraging people. And we want you to get out there. Get off the dock now. Get out there and do something. And hey, when you find our platforms, hit subscribe, like, notify, share, and let other people know what's happening with the Mosaic Initiative. You can do that by sharing this broadcast. And we'd love to have you become our partner or friend through our partnership with Patreon. You can make a gift through On the Dock with Pastor Troy, and you can become a sponsor or a partner with that program as well. And finally, last but not least, if you don't have a church home, check this out. we would love to have you at Community Faith Church. If you're in the Southern Illinois area, 10 o'clock on Sundays, Wednesday at 6:30 they're the host church for this podcast. And if you are not in our region, hey, we have people from Thailand watch us every week, Michigan, Minnesota, all over. You can join us at our virtual campus at coftv.com. Embedded players there. You can also watch us on our Facebook and YouTube channel under Community Faith Church. We'd love to have you here. And we have enjoyed having you for this incredible series.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've done a great job, Haley Ruth. Thank you, Beth. We're going to dig in the next series. Come back and join us real soon. Get that coffee ready. Be back with us in part 2 on the dock with Pastor Troy. Have a great one.